That was a nice high energy. Welcome to this session of Meet the Music from Dead Girl Sorry. Take Care of You. Original piece, as most of what we're hearing this evening is. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Woo. Now, to do the roster and then hear a little bit about your musical past, because this is an interesting band, interesting lineup of musicians that all have your own musical roots. We have Nate Ochoa on acoustic guitar, Brian Keysbury electric bass, Tim Becker electric guitar, Travis Roebuck on mandolin, nice touch, Rich Rice on vocals, and of course Alan Quant on drums. And you're all doing backup, which we appreciate here in the studio as well. Why don't we start with you, Nate, as guitar player for this band. You're doing a really swell job. Where did it all start, your musical passion?
It's hard to say. We grew up in a pretty musical family. Parents always listened to music, and my uncle used to own a club, and most weekends I'd find myself there, and there's a concert every weekend,
So you absorbed it.
yeah, pretty much.
And now you're all from the tri-state area, as I understand, fairly nearby. And so when you did pick up a musical instrument, was it a guitar?
The first instrument would have been saxophone,
Okay.
and and the second would have been guitar. So,
And you've stayed pretty much with it ever since?
Yep.
Other bands before you got into Dead Girl Story?
I've been in a number of bands. I'd say most recently would have been Pleasing Melanie. We played
Okay.
for probably about 5 years.
So good for you, and you brought your interesting sound and style to the table. What about you, Brian?
I started about the same way, just listening to records, and then I actually picked up clarinet in school when I started playing music. Just kind of graduated from there. Knew that going out, there wasn't a whole lot of call for playing clarinet.
I know, I understand. Saxophone maybe, but yeah.
Picked up like playing guitar and piano, and then just went to bass because everybody was playing guitar. Nobody had a bass player. I'm like, seems logical. Might start getting paid if I do that.
Good. And again, you finesse on your bass, and that's kind of nice too. And that would be your whole musical background then, reflecting in that. Is this the first big band that you've been in, or?
It's kind of my second. I was in a band in Ohio called As of Yet. We were
Okay.
together for probably 2 years and just doing kind of small tours around Northwest Ohio area. And
Which is a nicely musical area, so if you
Yeah.
cut your teeth there, and then how'd you get in with these guys?
yeah, how did I get here?
Maybe
it was
Oh,
just
Rob.
John.
No.
John from
Big
Electric
John
Panda.
from
That's
Electric
right.
Panda.
That's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
Again, because they needed a bass player.
Yep.
And so, well, good. Job security, and brought you here with us right now. That's a good thing. What about you, Tim?
I'm from up in Battle Creek.
Uh-huh.
Moved down here about 2-3 years ago.
Have you always been electric guitar man? Started
Piano
out on
when I was a
something?
little kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
We always have to ask anybody that's been on piano, were you forced and traumatized to take piano lessons, or was it something that you embraced?
Forced in the church, actually.
Oh, okay.
Traumatized completely.
You ever play the keys anymore?
Once in a while. Once I tune the piano, I got in my house. I look forward to it.
And good for them. That speaks well too of your musical past, and so now you're the electric guitar man and in this group and loving it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A nice inclusion, and it's really your strings rich. That brings me to Travis, the mandolin player. Where did you get started in the musical chain?
In music in general, I was band geeks like Brian and Nate. Started on the trumpet in the 6th grade, played
Okay.
all the way through high school. Always hanging out with all the other musicians, and same thing with Brian. They always needed a bass player, so I just kind of had a knack for music, and I picked it up, and I've been in bands ever since. That
And
was a
so
long-
you have the double good fortune to do the bass and the mandolin.
Correct. I just picked mandolin up a few years ago. My dad's pretty heavy into bluegrass and playing rhythm guitar and mandolin, and holiday gatherings I would, slowly picked it up. I'm like, hey, it's basically based on, it's an 8-string instrument, but based on 4 strings. So I picked it up pretty quick, and then it just kind of stuck, and I was kind of in the closet about enjoying that type of music until
That was your secret guilty pleasure,
yes,
eh?
it was. And then we finally put it together one day, and here you have it.
Well, again, I'm glad that you did, because it rounds out the sound nicely. And speaking of rounding out the sound, Rich Rice, you're the vocal man and composer of a lot of these pieces. Where did you get started in music?
Oh, I don't know. I just kind of always been a music fan. So I think it came natural to actually try to play it off and try to play. Probably one of my first bands I was in was a band anyways that did anything with Spitface 30. And then later on did Last Chance at Failure. But I started out as a bass player, and somehow, some way, at some point they decided in Spitface 30 that I should be a singer.
Well, go back all the way, though. Did you sing when you were a kid?
No, not at all. It was kind of a weird situation how I ended up even being a singer. We couldn't find a singer. And then come to find out, like, every time we were trying to audition a singer, I would be like, no, more like this. And it was just like, well, why don't you just sing? It'd probably be easier to find a bass player than it would be to find a singer.
Well, since you've got two other bass players here, I guess that sort of
Yeah,
proves the theory, too. And
Yeah.
good for you. And again, if it was supposed to come out and it did, that's most wonderful. And last but certainly not least, my connection to this whole band from all of his other musical past is Alan Quant. When did you get started on the drums, Alan?
He hasn't yet.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I was forced to play piano before I could play drums.
Okay, you were one of those poor piano children.
My mother was a folk singer, and she told me that I had to learn piano before I made this ruckus. I think she was probably hoping that I'd just give up so that I didn't get drums. But she failed, and now I make ruckus.
And you showed her because you took the drum kit to heart. And again, we're glad that you have, and you grace a lot of bands in the area, and not the least of which is Dead Girl Sorry. So this is Meet the Music. Before we find out many things, including the origin of the name Dead Girl Sorry, we're going to go to the next piece of music. This is another original. It's called Lonely Boy. Want to tell me how it came to be?
Kind of situation where try rekindling something and it doesn't really work. Yeah, one of those shoot and a miss type songs.
Take it away, Dead Girl Sorry, here on Meet the Music. It's Lonely Boy.